Hello, and welcome to Music Stuff with Spock. Today I'd like to talk about a notation system I came up with for writing parts on suspended cymbals or cymbals on a stand. And this came about because in 1989 to 90 I was working on a piece called Transitory Systems Number 1, which was for 6 basses, 6 percussion, and prepared piano. And the percussion parts had a lot of cymbal work with what I wanted was very specific sounds played in specific areas of the cymbal. And at the time, I wasn't aware of all the little pictograms you can use to put above the staff to show where to play. And so I finished the score as it was, and it's kind of halfway between an avant-garde and experimental work. There's a fair amount of improvisation that would happen as to exactly what kind of cymbal and how to play it and all that kind of stuff. And it works like that kind of piece, but that's not what I wanted. So over the course of the next couple of years, I put some thought into this, and I thought, okay, I need a simple, easy-to-read system that's going to take care of all this nonsense. And so over the course of the next couple of years, I came up with this notation system. And after I fixed the fiddly bits, I wrote a piece called Sonata for Solo Cymbal, which is a 3-movement work for a single cymbal, using that notation and at the time coming up with as many effects as I could do very quickly. I wrote the piece in just about a few days to a week. And since that time, I have used it in certain situations. If you're writing an orchestral piece, and in most cases the cymbals there are just playing rhythms or doing spacey things in the background. And whether or not you're playing it here or here doesn't make a difference. Actually, it does make a difference, but the player will gauge as to where to play it according to how the sound in the room is worked and their part and how it's supposed to fit in. But in the case of a soloistic work, like for just a percussion player, or small chamber work, let's say flute and harp and percussion, and if you have a bunch of stuff you want to do on cymbals, you might want to have the difference, because playing on the bell is not the same as playing in the middle or playing at the end. And if you use a stick, you hear the difference in these different tones. Got a higher upper partial content. There the the whole cymbal starts to vibrate. And now you get a more multi-spectrum wash. And it gets a little thinner as you get into the nodal point. And that's the overall mid-range sound of the instrument. And then the partials go up and down at the same time. And when you hit it down there, you get a lot of the bottom end of the cymbal. And of course, on the end. And for a soloistic work or chamber work, you might want to notate all those different gradations. Now, you can do it with pictograms, but at the time I thought it was fussy. And with the complications of copyists and stuff like that. Now, that I do everything on Finale and I can copy off my own parts and it's quick and easy. That's a different story. But in the days of handwritten charts, I figured, well, if you want to let the percussion player play where they want, just give them a single line. And if not, then you use my system. So I'm going to show you how that system works. And if you think it's a neat idea, you can use it. And if you think it's not, then don't. This particular system of notation is more of an action-oriented score in that it shows where to hit the cymbal as opposed to what the overall timbre is going to sound like. And depending on what cymbal you have, you get very different sounds and the different types. Usually ride cymbals don't have as much variation. Crash cymbals have a little more. China cymbals have a fair amount of variation over the shape. But you can write it the same way consistently. Unless the cymbal is an unusual shape or has a slit or a crack in it, like this trash cymbal, then the timbres are going to be the same on either side of the cymbal. If I hit it on this side of the bell, if I hit it in the center of the cymbal, if I hit it on the edge, they're pretty much the same sound. So we really only have to concern ourselves with half the cymbal, the radius, from the center on the way out. I went through a few different formats, 2 lines, 3 lines, but eventually settled on the regular 5-line staff. Here we see the different divisions of the cymbal and how they correspond to the notation system. Rapid changes from one area to another can be exactly notated without the need of pictograms or other explanations. Now, when bowing the cymbal or looking for very specific timbres, sometimes the placement of the other hand is necessary. This can be done in the staff with little X's or shapes, but I found it was clearer when the staff was just for the playing of the cymbal and the other elements used some kind of a pictogram. A hand shape can be stylized and used as a guide to where to place the hand, the fingers, or various mutes. By using both systems together, one can accurately notate any action to be performed on the cymbal. Here's part of the legend for the piece. On the one side we have the basic effects, muted, open, 1 stick, 2 stick, gradual changes, and things like that. On the other side we have some examples of what can be done with this notation. So let's look at a few of these. The cymbal is muted while struck and then allowed to vibrate. The cymbal is struck and allowed to ring for the duration of the note, and then it is muted. The cymbal is muted before, during, and after it is struck, producing a thud tone. While the cymbal is ringing, it is partially muted to remove some of the harmonics, and the rest are allowed to ring. There are a number of different ways to notate hitting a cymbal, allowing it to ring for a bit, and then muting part of it to allow certain harmonics to ring on. And I showed you the way I did it in the sonata for solo cymbal, and I don't use that anymore, and this is how I notate it now. I think this pretty clearly shows that you strike the cymbal, allow it to ring for 3 beats, and then you briefly mute it, allowing harmonics to ring after that. Now, how you draw the mute sign can be either put in front of the note like this, or it can be drawn on the stem, or it can be placed below the staff, below the note, to be muted. 1, 2, 3. The harmonics produced by doing this will depend on where you actually mute the cymbal. Muting the edge of the cymbal will produce different harmonics than muting in the center of the cymbal. So you can show this with the hand cymbal on the pictogram as to where it is specifically supposed to be muted. If you want to leave your finger on the cymbal for a certain length of time to help the cymbal decay a little more, you can show that as well. The placement of the hand on the cymbal can easily be shown with the pictograms. However, there is a way to show it in the score itself without the pictograms. The fingers of the hand that's muting the cymbal can be represented by X's, little squares, or small circles to represent the pads of the fingers. And these can be placed in the score wherever you need them to be. If you want to mute the cymbal with the whole hand, you can represent that either with a rectangle or with a hand-like pictogram. Now that I'm taking another look at this, I'm kind of digging the mutes put into the score and not having the pictogram of the cymbal on top. The nice thing about the pictogram is it's very hard to confuse what you're supposed to do with your hand. However, just putting little X's or circles into the score is a little more elegant. Here's an example of a 2-bar sketch that I've written. On the top, there's the notation where I'm just using little circles to represent the fingers. And on the bottom is the notation we've been looking at so far, where with the use of the cymbal pictogram on top. So, what I've done here to almost close off this video is I've put together a little sketch of stuff to be played on the cymbal with the left hand mute being used in that way. For this sketch, I've got little X's where the fingers are supposed to be placed. If you use 2 fingers like that, there's 2 X's with a little bar connecting the 2 together. If you want to use your whole hand on the cymbal, then there are 2 X's with a big thick bar in between. So there's a look at my notational system for cymbals. I don't use it very often, only if I'm doing a solo percussion piece and the cymbal is like the prominent element. Usually a single line staff will do. However, in previous videos we've looked at the different kind of mallets and the different kind of implements you can use to make a cymbal vibrate, the use of mutes, and in this video we've pretty much concentrated on where on the cymbal you're going to do these things. So when you think of the complete palette of colors you can get from a single cymbal, it will depend on what kind of cymbal it is, how you're going to initiate the vibrations, whether it's with a bow or a brush or a beater of some type, whether or not there are going to be mutes used, and what you're going to do with your left hand as you do this, and now where you're going to play that. So when you take those 5 different variables and all the different ways you can do that, the amount of sounds you can get out of just a single cymbal is in the hundreds, if not thousands. So if you don't need to use that notational system, that's fine, but at the very least, maybe this has given you a little look at some of the nuances that can be done with a cymbal. I hope that was interesting. See you soon.